years. That's what we are about. If you're brand new and you're wondering, like, what really is this church about? It's about stories of transformation. It's about all kinds of people, even the person sitting in your chair, experiencing new life as you find and follow Christ. It's you experiencing new growth. It's you going and growing to places you never dreamed possible. And Mama Marge's story is certainly one of those stories. And I think for a whole bunch of us at Mission right now, a bunch of us would say, yeah, we feel never the same already. We're only 7 months into this 2-year commitment, and already it's stretching us, it's challenging us. We feel never the same. If you're brand new, I want you to feel that way, and we can talk after the service at the booth on a way in which you can feel that way. I believe when we inhabit and move into our brand new space, we're going to feel a lot of things, one of which is, man, it's worth it that we have been feeling never the same. But I think a bunch of us would also say, as we've felt never the same, we also feel pretty afraid. We are never the same, and we've never been this afraid. I mean, that's how I felt, and it feels kind of challenging. It's a tension. And so I want to talk about that real quick. I think it's really important because a bunch of you, perhaps, maybe this is the first time you've ever given like this. Maybe some of you, this is the first church you've ever been a part of. And you got baptized, and you said yes to Jesus, hoping that the fear would dissipate. You said yes to King Jesus because you're saying, all right, I never want to be afraid again. But here's what you're coming to learn in your discipleship journey. You're coming to learn that the goal of the Christian life is not fearlessness, it's faithfulness in the midst of fear. Here's what I've learned, and I think you're learning it too, right? The more on mission you are, the more fear we face. The more times we say yes to Jesus, the more giants tend to show up, right? And here's what you and I are experiencing. As we're never the same, we are also experiencing a new kind of courage, a new kind of faith welling up within us. Fearlessness is not the goal. Faithfulness in the midst of fear is. Last Sunday, we talked about this, how fear reveals our foundation. Your fear and my fear, it reveals our foundation. I got more responses from you guys from that sermon than any sermon I've ever given in the history of my life and in the history of this church. More emails, more texts. I haven't got any telegrams yet. But you've just been talking to me constantly about last week's sermon. Why is that? Here's why I think it isn't that. It's not because what I gave was necessarily in and of itself a great sermon. It wasn't very polished because I was still writing it as I was giving it. You guys remember this, right? Here's why I think you responded the way that you did. Because all of us feel afraid. I think all of us would say, fear, yep, that's where I live. Fear, yeah, now that I'm very familiar with. And God showed up, and his Spirit showed up in power, and the power of God's word penetrated and really kind of put his finger on a nerve ending that all of us have in common. It is this: we are afraid. And yet at the same time, we sense our Father saying, come on out a little bit further. Trust me with a little bit more. Fear reveals our foundation, and at the same time, fearlessness is not the goal. Faithfulness in the midst of fear is. I bring these two things up to make sure that we keep them in mind for the next 30 minutes. The topic we're going to talk about for the next 30 minutes from Acts chapter 20, it's really important that you keep one foot in last Sunday and one foot in this Sunday. All right, so let's try to be two places at once. Keep one foot in last Sunday, that entire thing around fear, right? And how if you start wrong, you'll end wrong, right? If you begin with you in mind, it's just not going to work out very well. Keep one foot there, and we're going to keep one foot in Acts chapter 20. If you have a Bible, open up to Acts chapter 20. As you get there, we're going to be looking at verse 35. And as you get there and you're turning there, or you're getting there through the church app, what we're going to look at today are the famous last words of the Apostle Paul. Now, these aren't his final words on earth before he dies. That's later in 2 Timothy. These are the final and famous last words of the Apostle Paul to the leaders in Ephesus. Now, we've been hanging out with Paul in Ephesus for the past 3 weeks. 2 weeks ago, we talked about the 12. You guys remember this? And there was this key question that kind of messed us all up. Like, what baptism did you receive? Like, I didn't know I should ask such a question. You guys remember that was 2 weeks ago, all right? And then last week, we talked about how Paul continued to hang out with these guys. In fact, every single day for 2 years, Paul was instructing them in the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. And so today is our final week. And what I want us to keep in mind when I get to these last words is I want you to think about how much must have Paul loved these people. Who have you been with every single day for the last 2 years? Now I want you to imagine if you were saying final words to them, you're never going to see them again. Imagine the emotion in your heart. Also, imagine how precise your words might be. If you were about to say some final words to people you're never going to see again that you've been with for a lot of time over the past 2 years, your words would be measured. Your words would not just be filler. Your words would be measured, they would be very precise, and they would come from a heart filled with emotion. That sets the context for these words. Of all the famous last words Paul could have given them, these are the shocking and surprising words. This is what he says. It is more blessed to give than to receive. Everyone on the count of three do want. 1, 2, 3. Good. Someone held it there at the end. That's good. All right, so I've been in this for 3 weeks studying this, and first time I came across, I kind of pushed away. I'm like, that's a little bit of a bummer. Like, of all the things, Paul, you could have said, this was your moment, man. Stand up, give the most compelling speech you've ever imagined given. These are the leaders of a church in this city that really mattered that they would prevail. Paul, of all the things you could have said, why did you say this? Paul, of all the things that could have equipped these church leaders to stay the course, to keep their true north in place, of all the things, Paul, it's more blessed to give than to receive. Paul, of all the things, why this? And I think Paul left these leaders with these words for a lot of reasons, two of which I want to talk about for a few minutes. Why is it more blessed to give than to receive? Two things specifically. Number one, giving provides. Giving provides. I'm more blessed when I give because giving to others provides in a way like receiving from others doesn't. I think we all have experienced this before. Today is the kickoff of something really exciting. It's called the Holiday Gift Mart. Show of hands, how many of you have heard, I guess we can do that, and that, of the Holiday Gift Mart? It's something we love at this church. It's something we do every single year around Christmas time for the most at-risk families in the tent. And if you've never experienced this, you just gotta come. You just gotta come this year and experience this. On your way out today, and you probably saw the traffic jam on your way in the hallway, is the Holiday Gift Mart table. All the volunteer leadership team, they're there. These guys have normal jobs like you guys, and yet they work on this experience and event almost 12 months out of the year. They work so hard on this. And today is the first day that you can sign up to volunteer at the Holiday Gift Mart. I want you guys to know, if you wait on this, you probably won't have a spot to volunteer. It actually sells out every single year. So I want you to be very action-oriented on this. Don't overthink it. Just go and register. And talk to them. If you have some questions, like the dates and where it's at and all that, they can answer all of those questions. If you're new to Mission Church, maybe you're new in the past 3 months, even in the past 10 months, make sure that you volunteer at this for this reason. If you want to see the heart of our church in action, open your eyes at the Holiday Gift Mart. Secondly, if you're looking for some friends, and all of us need friends, this is one of the best places. If you're in a new church or you're new here at Mission, it's one of the best ways to connect with new people. You'd be amazed at how many key volunteers in our church say they kind of got their start at the Holiday Gift Mart. That's when Mission really felt like home. And so I want to encourage you to engage in this year's Holiday Gift Mart. It's an incredible experience. I don't have time to get into all the details of it, but I want to make sure you understand this. We're not just giving toys. Toys are the Trojan horse. Some of you took history at one point in your life. Toys are the Trojan horse for the hope of heaven. More than toys, what we are doing is we are partnering with King Jesus to love the least and the last and oftentimes the forgotten. We are providing for at-risk kids. We're saying it's not okay on Christmas morning for them to come down the stairs for there to be nothing there. We're going to fix that, and we've been fixing that. We're going to do something about it, and what happens when we do this, we feel it. In our hearts, we feel these words of the Apostle Paul. I think this Holiday Gift Mart, if I were to give you the microphone, you'd agree in that moment. You say, now in this moment, yeah, I'm good with that. It really is more blessed to give than to receive. Giving provides hope for others. When was the last time someone gave to you in such a way that it filled your heart with hope? For me, it was this past Tuesday. I was at work, kind of getting the day going, and Grace handed me an envelope. It was a card from somewhere, or from someone I didn't know. Got the address on there, and it was from Colorado, of all places. I'm like, all right, that's cool. I open it up, and there's a handwritten card. And this person who I've never met writes in this handwritten card, "Hey, John, thanks for coming out to preach a few weeks ago when I was in Colorado. Your sermon really meant a lot to us." And what they said in the card is, as they've been praying for me and my family, they just said, when you talked about your wife's Lyme's disease and what that's been like for the past couple years, we just were so moved in our heart to give. And they wrote a ridiculous check to help offset some of our medical costs. I don't know who these people are, right? And I don't walk around talking about all this all the time. Some of you never even knew that, all right? But as I open this up and as I read their words and as I call Kelly, I'm like, I don't know who these people are. But God has spoken to them, and here they are wanting to help us. And so I got in the car and I drove to the boat and I doubled down and I doubled the money in 30 minutes. And no, I didn't do that. I didn't do it. I just want to relieve some of the tension. Some of you were thinking that. There's 12 steps for it. No. But man, I'm telling you guys, I haven't felt like that in a long time. I mean, a lot of people help us all the time, a lot of which we're related to, and it goes a long way. But someone you don't even know, so God spoke to us. And what was filling my heart in that moment was hope. I mean, that's what it was. It was hope. Why is it more blessed to give than to receive? Man, because we can be on the giving end of that. Giving provides. What does it provide? It provides hope. What does it also provide? It provides a picture of generosity to our own. Yes, giving is about giving to others, but it's also about giving to our own, those closest to us. The reason I value giving as much as I do, it's because of the home I was raised in. I'm not sure what you experienced around your dinner table, but I know what I experienced around my dinner table. We talked about sports, and oftentimes we talked about giving and the miracles that God was doing in and around our family. My parents never made that much money. They're on our staff now, which means they don't make that much money. But I'm telling you, I did not grow up in a home that freaked out about money. I cannot. I was thinking this morning, I was trying to recall one single conversation. I can't recall one. I can't pull up one. And maybe there was and I forgot, but I can't remember one. What I can remember is my mom and dad saying, kids, you cannot outgive God. You can't. Kids, if you want to experience that God is your greatest provider, then get in the game on giving. And this is just the environment I grew up in. So for me and my brothers, tithing, it's one of the things that people freak out about, all right? I get it. I mean, it feels to a lot of people like there's just no way, okay? But for me, growing up in my home, tithing wasn't for those crazy people. It's just what Peacocks did. It's just what we did. It's a home that I grew up in. In giving, my parents gave a lot more than money. They gave me and my brothers a picture of the blessed life. They gave us a picture of how you cannot outgive God. It's easy for me to preach on giving because it is literally my favorite thing in the world. I get more excited about giving to people than anything. Those people that actually really know John Peacock, you know this to be true about me. I would give the shirt off my back, and at times I love to give. It's when I feel most alive. And that passion, it did not come through seminary or through reading a book. It came from a dinner table. Sitting around, watching my mom and dad. Parents, hear me on this. If you desire for your child to live a generous life, don't tell them, show them. Don't tell them, show them. When you dream about the life of your kids, and I dream about the life of my two girls all the time, the kind of life they're going to live down the road. When I dream about that and I think about that, I imagine the end. I think about Hallie and Hannah being the most generous people in their generation. I think about them as pace setters. I think about them being the kind of people that go first. That say you can trust God. Life outside the boat's way better than inside. I dream about this for them. And so that means that I'm not just gonna tell them about it, I'm gonna show them. My daughter Hannah, at the last class of her last school year in June, She attends a Christian school in this area. It's a great school, and they have them do prayer requests for the summer. And they went around, and they had to write it all down. And I heard back from the teacher on this one. Of all the things Hannah could have written down, she wrote down that they would pray for her dad and funding the new building. Yeah, which, that can go a couple different ways. I'm like, all right, am I like freaking out around her? Like, why is she writing this? But I think she wrote that, and it's just the sweetest prayer request because I've invited her into this. I built a little memorial on the property, and I built it the afternoon of advanced commitment night. I needed to do it. And I built it to tell God, like, I'm trusting you now, before I know what's coming in. And I go back to that place all the time. And I've taken Hannah there. And I tell her what this means. And I tell her about how afraid I am. But that's okay, because we're going to keep moving forward. I tell her about it's okay when you feel afraid. It doesn't mean you back down. It just means you trust God more. I tell her about, here's the thing, like giants are just going to continue to show up the more you take more ground. And what I want you to do, Hannah, is I want you to just keep picking up the slingshot and keep putting rocks in there and trust in your God that he's going to come through. And I think the reason Hannah wrote that down there is because I've invited her into this journey that does feel afraid, but it is absolutely forming me and it's forming us as a family. Parents, I want you to not just tell your kids about generosity, I want you to show them. This is so important. Why is it more blessed to give? A lot of reasons, but number one, giving provides. It provides for them. It also provides for our own. Secondly, why else do I think Paul said these words? And he quotes Jesus, by the way. I think it's because giving protects. I really believe this. I've seen this in my own life. You've seen this in your life. How giving protects us. Giving isn't just about them. Giving is about you. It's about you. If you do a word study in the Bible, which I know you do these kinds of things all the time, you're wondering what to do with your time. If you do a word study in the Bible, you'll find that prayer comes up 500 times in the Bible, which is kind of expected. Faith, that's another kind of on the top list, that comes up 500 times as well. But did you know that money and resources comes up 2,000 times? And the first time I came across this, I wasn't leading a church, I wasn't in a capital campaign, but I was really struck by this. In fact, when you study the sermons of Jesus, the sermons he gave, you wouldn't want to come to or bring your friends to. The reason is because the thing he talked about more than anything besides the kingdom of God was money and possessions. Now, it caused me to think, why did he do that? Was Jesus out to get him? Was Jesus just running some kind of scheme? Oh, that's what he was doing. He was teaching on it so much that he could build his mansion on a hill. No, he didn't have anything like that. I mean, was Jesus just kind of stockpiling all of this so he could retire early? No, he left. Like, why did Jesus do all this? I mean, why did he talk what seems to be like over and over and over and over again about money and possessions? Is it because God loves you more than anyone that you'll ever meet? Is it because God wants to protect you from the things that can possess you? Here's what you know. It's the same thing I know. There are a few things in this world that can possess us faster and greater than our possessions. Isn't it amazing? It happens to me too, where we go out there and we buy all kinds of stuff. I mean, we own it, and then it owns us. No? I'm the only one? I mean, this is what happens. So we'll just build some storage compartments and storage buildings. I mean, have you ever noticed how many storage buildings there are in America? If you've ever traveled outside of America, you don't see those anywhere. I mean, we have mastered the art of building bigger barns. All right? That's kind of a Bible aside, which we can talk about later. I mean, this is just what is going on. And so why is it more blessed to give than to receive? I believe because one of the things that can get us off track more than anything is when we don't understand what Paul is saying to them. It protects. What does it protect us from? A lot of things. Two things I want to talk about, both of which you're not going to want to hear. Now, before I say these two things, some of you invited a friend today. Last service was the highest attendance service we've ever had in the history of our church, single service. It was like Easter last service. Amazing, all right? It is awesome. And I'm like, this is just, of course, next Sunday, half of them will be here, right? So you invited a friend, and I love that because you're gathering differently. And some of you, when you walked in within the first 5 minutes, like, no, he's not going to do it. He's not going to do it. He's talking about giving. Ruining everything, all right? So I want you to just kind of breathe deep. I want you to breathe deep. Here's what I believe. If you're visiting our church and choose to come back next week, even though I talked about giving today, if you're not a follower of Jesus, all right, that's a number of you. You're investigating who Jesus is. You came to a great place to do that. I believe everything I'm talking to you about today actually is helpful. Like, try it on. All right, test drive it for a little bit. Even if you don't follow Jesus, and even if you're saying, no, I'm not a Christian, I believe everything that we're talking about today actually will add great value to your life. Amen. Right? So why is it more blessed to give? Well, it provides, and most of us would agree with that, but it also protects. What does it protect us from? Well, one of the main things it protects you from is greed. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're preaching on this, John, because of the person sitting next to me. They need to hear this, right? I've been a pastor for 15 years. I've had thousands of meetings with people. I've drank probably 2 billion cups of coffee in the past 15 years, all right? Here's what is fascinating. I thought about this. Thousands of meetings. People meet with me. They confess all kinds of things. They share what's going on in their life, okay? I've yet to have one person sit down and say, John, here's why I'm meeting with you. I'm greedy. I find that interesting. All right? I'm not saying you're greedy. I'm just finding that interesting. And the reason I find it interesting is because I know me. I can be greedy. Yeah, I can be greedy. And here's what I know about the greed in my own life when it seeps in. It is sneaky. Sneaky. Greed is so subtle. Greed is something we see in them, generally don't see in us. Greed, whenever it's preached on, which it isn't preached on much because you guys don't come back, greed is one of those things you're like, all right, get to the next one because this isn't my thing. Yet I believe greed is one of the things plaguing American Christianity. Greed is one of the things that is plaguing you. At times can plague me. What's the solution? Give. We give. Why? It protects us from greed. You don't have to wait till you grow up to when you can begin to see greed begin to seep into your life. This past week was Halloween. And some of you saw my costume. Kelly talked me into that. The whole bit, the whole Forrest Gump thing. And it was exciting. We're with our neighbors. It's just an incredible thing. We redeem Halloween. It's the way we view it. We use it to connect with neighbors and love where we live. And so that's what we did. And my girls, 2 girls, they were very excited about it, got all dressed up, and they did like extra trick-or-treating. And afterwards, we're having our party at our neighbor's house, and my girls are not there. They're at my house. I'm wondering what they're doing. And they come back, and my youngest, Hallie, begins to talk to me about her inventory. She's up there right now. She's like, 156 pieces of my candy. So after the party, I went back to the house, and this girl, I mean, she is the most joy-filled human being I've ever met. She loves people so much. But second to loving Jesus and people is her love for candy. I mean, it's right there, okay? She's got, this is like her empire. And she's kind of brooding over it. Come hither, Father. These are my Snickers. These are my Butterfingers. I mean, she's just like, this is all mine. And I said, Hallie, do you know what I'm preaching on this coming Sunday? Yeah, I'm about to go there. This is what happens when you're raised in a pastor or something. I said, the Bible teaches it is more blessed to give than to receive. And I just think God would want you to give me all of your candy. And she's like, free, she doesn't ever know when to take me serious. She's like, whoa. Then I also remember what it says in Ephesians, fathers don't exasperate your children. So I let her go on it, right? The next day, God really moved in her heart. I want to just tell you about this. She said, Dad, I really do want to give back. And so from her, just her spoils of Halloween, that's it. She said, Dad, this is for you. And she handed me a packet of Sour Patch Kids. They're my favorite. And there's like 6 of them in the packet. She's like, here it is. Seriously, enjoy. All right? And it's cute. and it's so funny. And that's us. My stuff. So John, don't talk about this. All right, no, here it is. John, I'm going to ease my conscience, but I don't want to develop my trust. So here it is, all right? When is giving protecting you? It's when it's doing more than easing your conscience. It's a good place to start. When it is elevating and stretching and growing your trust in God, that's when it's protecting you. When it costs you something, that's when it's working. When it hurts, that's when it's more blessed to give than to receive. Why? It protects us. Jim Elliot, one of my favorite quotes, a graduate from Wheaton College. I often think, God, who's the next Jim Elliot? Maybe you could bring them through the doors of Mission Church. He said this, "He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose." In my family, a game that we used to play was a game called Monopoly. Any of you ever played Monopoly before? Show of hands. Yeah, okay, really popular game. It's an awesome game, it really is, unless you have two older brothers like me. And they're both strategic and business guys, and they're just killers, man. And especially my oldest brother, and he's watching right now in Atlanta. And so Jason, this is for you. I put this part of my sermon in for you, so I want you to listen to this. This is gonna be for your own help. We'd play Monopoly, and my oldest brother, Jason, is ruthless. And he is so good at Monopoly. I don't know why he's so good at it. I haven't figured it out, but he gets Park Place, and what's the other blue one? Is it Boardwalk? Yeah, he's over there on that part of the board. I've never even had anything on that part of the board. I'm on Oriental and all the other stuff, right? It's like $50, it's like nothing, right? They laugh at me. But he's building high-rises on top of high-rises over there on the high-price real estate. I mean, when you play Monopoly with him, he's probably going to win, and he's probably going to let you know that he's winning. I mean, he just kind of gets like this in his chair. But then the moment comes. It's my favorite part of the entire game. The moment comes when the game is over. And it all goes back in the box. I remember hearing this illustration from one of my favorite preachers, John Ortberg. And in that moment, I thought about generosity, but also thought about my brother Jason. I mean, imagine if he took the spoils of his victory in Monopoly and tried to pay his mortgage with it. It wouldn't work. And here's the thing, in life and in the game of Monopoly, your day is coming when it's over. And when that day comes, guess what? It all goes back in the box. You cannot take it with you. And this is why I believe Jesus taught on it as much as he did. It's more blessed to give than to receive. It protects us from a lot of things. Greed is one of those things. Another thing that no one has ever asked prayer for in the 15 years of pastoral ministry is entitlement. It's the thing we hate when we see in others, but generally fail to see in ourselves. No one has ever said, "Pastor, I need prayer for my entitlement." Now let me be clear on what I mean with this word. The cross of Christ has become so usual for you. The mercy of Jesus has become so commonplace for you. You can't remember the last time that your eyes were just filled with tears, just tears streaming down your face. In fact, you've even seeped into the kind of theology to think that, you know what, yeah, he probably should have died for you. I mean, you're missing so much of the gospel. I mean, you have drifted so much. You've become entitled. And in fact, gratitude is nowhere to be found. I love this quote from Erwin McManus. "No truth, no matter how profound, will find its way into a heart that is absent of gratitude." Giving protects us from feeling entitled to everything that God has given to us. Mama Marge, I love the part that you put in there in your story. It's my turn. That was powerful. And you're right, it is your turn. And you know what? It's everyone else's turn too. It's our turn. And this vision of Never the Same, it's our first permanent home. It's penetrating. It's moving our hearts unlike anything that's ever moved the heart of this church. It is her turn, and it is your turn, and it is my turn. It's our turn to give, not to get. It's to give in such a way to say that we already got everything in Jesus Christ. We've already been given everything through him. And so it's more blessed to give than to receive. It's just going to protect against entitlement. No, a heart of generosity. and gratitude is growing. When I'm not preaching here, I'm usually preaching at another church in Denver called Cherry Hills. Amazing church. Some of my best friends lead the church, and they bring me out there a few times a year to preach at it, and then I train up their church planners. It's a total joy that I get to do it. It really helps me a lot. And so I was out there recently, and they're seeing what truly appears to be the early signs of revival, like full-blown. Signs and wonders like I've never seen before, the book of Acts in real time. It's really an incredible thing that God is doing, and it's spreading here. Revival is oftentimes contagious. They're seeing incredible things. And one of the stories that struck me, I heard about this summer, is of a woman in their church. I mean, faithful, been coming to the church for some time. And the senior pastor, Shane, one of my best buddies, he preached a sermon like this on giving. And a lot of it was about the tithe, 10%, giving that back to God. And they got a letter a little bit later from this woman. And she talked about how heavy and convicted she felt about her levels of generosity. When the Spirit of God comes, this is one of the signs. It's conviction. I mean, awesome things, freedom, all great things, but also conviction. It's kind of the fine print. And she talked about in this letter her conviction around giving. And so she said, here's what I've decided to do. I'm back paying my tithe from the last 2 years. In 39 years of being around the church, I've never heard of this. I'm back paying my tithe for the last 2 years to the tune of $200,000. Yeah, that was my response. And then my next response was this. I said, that's a great story. Did you guys know that we're in a capital campaign right now? We don't need all of it. I mean, just half would be fine. Why did she respond like that? Well, here's the final part of the story. This lady had been deaf in one of her ears for almost her entire life. And after that sermon, she came forward to receive prayer for healing. And just like so many other times, did not experience what she was hoping she would experience. She walked away and went out to the parking lot and got into her car. And as she turned on her car, something began to crackle in this ear. And in an instant, God completely restored the hearing in her ear. Perfect hearing. Some of you are saying, all right, John, if God would do that for me, then I might respond like that too. And maybe that's true, but let me ask you this question. What's greater, hearing or eternity? What's more amazing? Hearing, and that is amazing, or the forgiveness of your sin, past, present, future? What's more amazing? Something physical or something spiritual that will last for eternity? And so here's the thing. I don't want you to end this sermon listening to me focusing on that story or focusing on a statistic or anything like that. I want you to finish by focusing on the cross of Jesus Christ. This is what disciples of Jesus have figured out. The focal point of their giving is the cross. They don't wait for a capital campaign to live with extraordinary generosity. No, they fix their eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. He endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down, meaning he finished what he was sent to do. I'm not sure what your focal point has become during Never the Same, but is it the cross of Christ? Right now, we're going to receive communion. I can't think of a better way to finish a talk on giving than to receive. And this is the thing in the kingdom of God. It always begins with receiving, and from that place we give. So I want to pray for you. If you guys would stand to your feet. I'm going to pray for our time of communion. We're going to come forward or go back there and you'll receive communion. The bread's already ready for you. Dip it in the juice. And our band's going to respond with one of my all-time favorite songs. And I'm asking that something miraculous would happen. I'm into the miraculous. And I can't think of anything more miraculous than someone responding to the mercy and grace of Jesus Christ. I can't think of anything more miraculous than someone who was lost becoming found. Nothing tops that. And I'm praying for some of you that today as you approach the communion table, maybe you've done this a million times in your life, but you didn't understand it until this moment, that you're gonna take the bread that represents the body of Jesus Christ, and you're gonna dip it in the juice that represents the blood of Jesus Christ, and you're gonna ingest the greatest news that there's ever been, that he came for your rescue. And from that place, we're gonna live with an increased generosity. God, thank you so much for what you're doing. God, thank you for these final words that you put in the mouth of Paul to give to the leaders of the Ephesian church. It's more blessed to give than to receive. And God, what I'm asking now, what our prayer team has been praying for all hour, is that this time at your table would mark us, would affect us, would shape us, would transform us. We're asking that you would do that, God, and we're praying and we're trusting that you will continue to work in and through this church in ways like we have never seen before. We love you, Jesus, and we thank you for the finished work of Jesus Christ on the cross for the salvation of mankind. We thank you. And all God's people agreed and said, amen.